Hello, and welcome to our Energy Connect studio at the World Utilities Congress. I'm delighted to have sitting next to me in the studio today, Loyiso Tyabashe, Group CEO, NECSA, to come and talk to me about the important issue of nuclear power generation. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Now, Loyiso, could you just first off, to all the audience, tell us a bit more about what you do and what your company's focused on in the nuclear energy space?
Thank you very much, Julian. My company, NECSA, which is the South African Nuclear Energy Corporation, does focus primarily on nuclear research. That's its fundamental mandate. It's fully owned by the state. And what we do as part of the spin-offs of nuclear research is that we develop and produce nuclear medical isotopes for cancer treatment and cancer detection. In addition to that, we also manufacture some chemicals in the form of fluorochemical complex. We produce fluorine, hydrofluoric acid, and also some other fluorine-based products like xenon difluoride. Another element of it is that we do produce components that are nuclear grade. We are the first company to produce nuclear grade accredited components in the form of the ESME qualification. So we do produce components both for conventional industry as well as for the nuclear industry. What we are now starting to focus on is nuclear power generation. At this point in time, we are really gearing ourselves up to start the nuclear program in earnest once given the mandate.
That's really interesting. And I think, what do you think about the importance of needing this balance to meet the energy needs, but also to keep in mind the climate goals we have? And how important can nuclear energy power generation fit that?
Yeah. I believe strongly that nuclear power does hit the sweet spot as it pertains to the three important aspects, which is energy security, the economic and the affordability thereof, as well as the environmental impacts, because it's a low carbon emitting technology. So it does assist in meeting the net zero goals that many governments are focusing on. Affordability in the sense that in as much as your upfront capital costs for nuclear power are quite high, but if you look really at the levelized cost of energy, it is cheaper for the consumer. It's one of the cheapest energy forms that you can get from the grid. That is evidenced by the electricity price in France, which is predominantly nuclear powered. And we see it mostly where you have nuclear power generation. Generally, the price of electricity is very low. But at the same time, we have a very reliable energy source, which is available for more than 80% of the time. So it talks with the energy security. And I think one of the most important aspects about nuclear is the fact that it's not place-bound. You don't need to site the nuclear plant next to where you find uranium or whatever source material is used, because you mine and then you process the material and fabricate your fuel very far, typically from your power plant. So which means you can just send nuclear fuel pretty much anywhere in the world, as long as you meet all the environmental requirements and all the other legislations that are related to it.
That's really interesting about nuclear power not being place-bound and deployed anywhere be a really important factor for developing countries looking at new power generation.
Yes. The nuclear power technology, unlike many other technologies where you need to be where the energy source is, or the fundamental or primary energy is. With nuclear power, you need to mine whatever material, be it uranium or thorium. You need to process it in the form of converting it, and then you enrich it in an enrichment plant, and you do fabrication of the fuel that is finally transported anywhere in the world. So effectively, you don't really need to be close, because most of the nuclear power plants are not close to any conversion or enrichment facility. You get to transport nuclear fuel to the destination plant. And that is very important because there are stringent protocols with the International Atomic Energy Agency, as well as the nuclear regulators of the different countries. So it is very much safe to travel unused fuel to the plant.
Really interesting. I just want to get your viewpoints on, pragmatic approach, planning on the point. These are big infrastructure projects. How important is, economics of scale, when you're looking at a nuclear project?
Yes. I must state that fundamentally mega projects do fail, not because they are nuclear, but because there's been no adequate planning. We've seen it in building infrastructure like roads, bridges, where projects do get delayed and they escalate in budgets. But what you notice is that with adequate pre-planning, you can actually get nuclear projects to run very well. France was very good in demonstrating that when they were building in earnest. They built units quite consecutively, probably 6 to 9 months apart. In that process, you don't mobilize and demobilize all the time. Your mobilization team moves from one plant to the other, and you acquire the skill and you transfer the skill to the younger generation coming on board. This is also seen in China, where they are building nuclear plants programmatically. Once you stop, you have a problem of that demobilization. But if you continuously build at a pace and scale that allows for the staff to be moved around, it allows you to actually retain the skill. So I always say that if a country has got a program that it plans to do, it must really do it in a nice staggered approach so that you don't have that deployment of skills and unbundling of the skill, because that becomes very costly. And it is very important that then planning becomes important, the programmatic approach becomes very important, and also the national resource that you have allows you to deploy the plans quite well.
Yes, and meeting an energy crisis, it can't be achieved overnight. How important do you think is also long-term planning, but also having a real energy mix?
Yeah. So I usually use the anecdote that the shade of the tree that you enjoy today is the outcome of a decision that was taken 15 years ago or so. So it is important to do upfront planning so that we can deploy these longest programs like the nuclear plant, because it takes in the order of 6 to 8 years to build standard nuclear plants. But the world is moving now towards small modular reactors, which are assembled, some of them mostly in the factory, and they come just for closely like a Meccano set, where you'll assemble on site. So that becomes very, very important as we move forward, because the construction programs are improving quite globally. And I think nuclear needs to learn very fast to remain in the competitive game. So it is very important to make decisions now, plan upfront now, and start taking the actions that will allow the deployment of nuclear power plants to be quite smooth in the long term. We've seen countries that do it very well, wherein they would do the on-site infrastructure well before a nuclear decision is taken, doing that at risk to make sure that once the decision is taken that a utility can construct, then they start with the nuclear part of the construction, because there is a big upfront element which is non-nuclear, which is the on-site infrastructure, the water, the roads, you name it, and the skills that you need.
Now, we're here in Abu Dhabi for the second edition of the World Utilities Congress, and I remember you speaking earlier that you came to the first one. How important have it dedicated nuclear energy forum at a show like this?
Yeah, indeed, I was here last year in the inaugural session, and it's been an honor for me to be invited once again to speak at the nuclear forum. So the nuclear part of this is crucial in the sense that nuclear cannot be left alone or left behind. It is part of the energy mix, and we've seen it globally that where you deploy nuclear power plants, you are bound to have an economic prosperity in any country. You are bound to have reduced carbon footprint. So it is important to push the nuclear technology and demystify the myth around the nuclear programs, because I think there's a lot of misinformation that is out there. So it is important that the nuclear specialists, the nuclear technical people come up front and they share what they see as the role of nuclear going forward.
Really agree on that, and that's really fascinating to hear about that point of view. And just thank you so much for coming down to the Energy Connect studio and giving me your insights and views on this really important topic of nuclear energy power generation. And let's hope you hear decisions soon.
Thank you very much, Julian, for the invite. And it's been an honor and privilege to participate in your platform. And I look forward to enriching the topic once more in the future. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for watching, and I look forward to bringing you more studio interviews on the show floor in coming days.